Another thing that you mentioned, just people being almost innately good at racing or sim racing, perhaps more specifically, but you're in a unique position in that you obviously do both. I mean, obviously driving the Ferrari in real life, driving Le Mans and tracks that we all are very familiar with, but also spending time and having very much dedication in the sim space. I'm always fascinated by, people that have just a natural talent of any age, sim racers who are barely out of high school or still in high school that are just incredibly fast. And I'm fascinated with how it translates because it seems to translate. Verstappen is incredibly fast on the sim. He's incredibly fast in real life. And I'm just fascinated by how that translates from sim to real and just where that talent comes from. I'm very interested in that.
I've got my theories. First of all, I just want to quick sidebar, if I may. Everyone's like, one day we'll prove that sim racers can be real racers. I'm like, a sim racer is the Formula One world champion.
Yes.
And then the next best guy, Lando Norris at the moment, is also a sim racer. These guys grew up on iRacing when they were kids. 2008, they weren't that young, but they were young enough that they were still... There goes my screen again. I really need to adjust that. There we go. They were young enough in which the game would still... Or sim, the sim, would still make an impression on them. And I genuinely believe, and I know this sounds crazy to people who don't watch technique and so on, but if you watch how Verstappen is driving a Formula One car, it looks like how you have to drive in iRacing. So the one thing that I'm not a big fan of in iRacing is how smooth you have to be with the wheel in order to be fast. You have to drive on rails. And especially in a GT car, which is like a heavy boy in racing car terms, not maybe as heavy as Aussie V8 or NASCAR, but it's still a heavy racing car. You got to wrestle that thing around a little bit. And if you watch any of the onboards, even the onboard of Marciello, who's currently the best GT driver, or one of the best, they're not driving around like iRacing, where it's commit to the apex long before you get to the apex and turn and then slowly release. But that's how Max is driving a Formula One car. So that kind of brings it back nicely. So, of course you need talent, and I think everyone's like, oh, it's the seat of your pants or it's your inner ear, some balance thing. I'm like, no, nonsense. I've seen lots of people with good balance who can't drive a racing car. But I do think that it's a combination of those things. You can't be bad at balancing, I suppose. But there is a sense of timing that is a natural sense of timing that's required in order to be good in a racing car. So if someone throws a ball at you and the ball's coming, you kind of tend to go back as it comes into your hand and catch it like that. All right. If the ball comes towards you and you go that way, the ball will likely bounce out of your hand. Same if you miss time when the ball touches the palm of your hand, if you close your hand too late, it's moved away. And now, so that's a sense of timing that a lot of us we just develop when we're young, when someone throws us a ball, etc. Right? But it's very much the same in a car. You also need timing, because when you brake, the car goes down. The front of the car goes down and grip starts to generate on the front tires. And then when you start to release the brake, if you're coming off the brake, the nose of the car is coming up. And it's in that phase there where you turn the wheel and the car generates enough grip to rotate at the right point where you're going to touch the apex, right? Some of us can do it in a very tight window of the optimum turning point. But someone like Max has an optimum turning point where he can nail it within this window every single time. And I always say to people, forget how many wins and pole positions they have. I want to know how many apexes did that guy miss in the whole year, from free practice 1 to the final lap of the race, or the final race of the season. It's probably 5, because so precise, he's so in the zone. When he releases that brake and applies turn in, it's at the perfect moment where he doesn't have to counter steer, it just goes boop, like in iRacing,
Yeah.
So I do think you can train to be better with your sense of timing. And I know this because I grew up very bad at ball sports. The only sport I could do was driving. But my ability improved when I started to focus on ball sports when I was much older. And I was with a trainer who would literally throw a ball at me while I was balancing on one leg or on a half ball or so on. And I became really, really, really good at catching a ball, no matter where you threw it. So it taught me that with training, you can improve your sense of timing and your balance and coordination and stuff, which goes back to the sim. And that's why it translates, because if you put hours into the sim, improving that sense of timing, improving that moment where you turn in, the moment where you release the brakes, etc., you will become a better racing driver. You just will. So I think that is more important. That question is more important than how realistic does a 296 feel in the sim versus how it feels in real life. Because it feels nothing like the sim, actually.
Yeah.
It feels like a racing car, but it doesn't feel like the 296 I've driven at Portimao. But how many times have I used the sim to improve my braking technique? Countless times.
This is Into the Apex Motorsport Podcast Network.